Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here live with Hat Tuesday number two. Hat Tuesday number two. Hopefully, you guys have had a really good, solid week ever since we last left you over on Friday, right? We did Fedora Friday number one, and we featured The Godfather. Really, it was here, me and Paul here, really kind of going back and forth, about the Godfather series. Well, mostly about Godfather Part One, obviously, because there were spoilers, and you guys already know how I am with spoilers. It's basically one of those things where I know that it's gonna be spoilers. I mentioned that, but just for you guys know, so that you guys know that if you watch any of my Fedora Friday series, from then or to the future, they're gonna be spoilers. Like it's just no way about it. It's gonna happen. So hopefully that's okay. And you guys are still enjoy it anyway. Like Paul mentioned that he didn't have a chance to watch the movie. So it was kind of like him going off of memory, but I had to watch The Godfather twice that week. It doesn't matter. This is not like a homework assignment. If you're not able to watch the movie and you're going from, hey, Paul, we're just talking.
Hey. Oh, I was clearing my eyes. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I actually was talking about you because I was just mentioning eventually about our Fedora Friday, our very first Fedora Friday. We featured Godfather. I had a good time. I don't know about you, Paul. I won't speak for you, but what do you think about
that? Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I think it was good fun just having a chat and just exploring, different things in the hat world together. And yeah, look, I'm sure there'll be people out there that will find it interesting and enjoyable and informative. There were things that I was learning. He was going, "Hi, Ian."
Hey, Ian.
Just that's better. Can't get
yeah. No, hey, that hat looks good. Paul, you want to mention? Let's just go to the. I feel like I always get ahead of myself, but I want to make sure that we focus on the hats because maybe that's. Well, that's probably why people are joining to begin with. So talk a little bit about your hat.
Well, the one I've got on today is a beaver fur felt from Fepsa. It's a very light green, which is the felt interested me because it was a fair color that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
It's got a nice, I think it's about 12.5 centimeter crown. Obviously 2 dents there, a nice sort of teardrop, if you like, in the center of it, and it rakes back nicely. But it's just very much a sort of 1940s look. It hasn't got a very big brim. I think it's one of those that's in between a fedora and a trilby. It's 6 centimeters, so just under 2.5 inches. So yeah, it's probably a big trilby, if they say.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And then, Paul, I guess I never really asked you, but is there a particular method, and maybe this doesn't vary, I'm just speaking out of ignorance, but for our few folks that are new, so describe the process of getting that teardrop, because it looks like a fine teardrop shape that you're able to get.
Yeah, no problem. What we do is we have in fact, I'll just take these hats off. Let's say I'm making it on this size hat block. So the reason why the cling film is over there is because steam can get into the wood and damage the wood. So you put the caplin, which is one of these things here. Here's one I've just selected to work on. It's a 50/50 beaver rabbit felt, which is it's a 240 grams, so very heavyweight. But essentially you're getting that steamed up all wet and putting it on the block. Now when you put it on the block and you stretch it down, you're doing all the process of getting the shape of the crown, and also this lovely L shape, if you like, that crease around the crown, so that is the key to making a very good hat, is having that really nice and crisp. And then once all that's done, what these are called is open crowns. So it means that either the hatter or the individual can then form the crown how they want. And I think that's great, because you can have a hat, and today I've got a teardrop in it. Tomorrow I could have a center crease in it. It's that versatile. It's just steam. And the hat has a certain memory, but as long as you don't, and I've seen a few hats that have got sun damage, if you like, and then it's very difficult to change it from one shape to another. But without sun damage, you can usually do that. But getting back to your question, so that's the sort of large one which you form the hat on, and then what you do is you form the, using your thumbs, you'll put a crease down the center.
Yeah.
Once you've done a crease down the center, then you can actually work in the circular bit at the top, or you can put a diamond in or whatever.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you take a second block, which is smaller. So let's say this block, and then you put the hat. I'm doing a thing I shouldn't do now. Back over the top of the smaller one, and then now it's on the block. You can actually use that to just go round with your finger and just press down. And when it's steamy and damp, if you like, it's very easy to move this material, and you get very quickly, you get used to it. This one's still quite, it's not very stiff because I didn't put any stiffener on it. It's just a nice that I can sort of put it in whatever shape I like, and because I've got quite a high crown on my head, I need a little bit of space there, so it's quite nice to have that like that. But it's something that you could be taught, anybody could be taught. Probably within half an hour, you'd be making a decent crown on the top of the thing. And you know, if you haven't got a hat block, then get a kitchen bowl or something like that, and that will help. As long as it goes up in there, that will go in there and help you get this sort of semicircle, circle rolling bit.
That was something I was always curious about, because again, I will admit that I've never attempted a teardrop shape on any of my hats, because one, I don't use steam. So I do, like, if you've seen my channel, you'll probably notice a lot of teardrops, but that's how they came to me. So like the D-Bar J came with a teardrop, very nice teardrop, which was, I'm assuming, was added by David Johnson, or maybe Kevin had it when it was in his possession, or the previous owner, but it came to me that way. So I'm like, okay, it's the way it is.
I mean, it's one of the questions that when we're making a hat for somebody, I'll sit down and ask, do you want a diamond? Do you want a center crease? Do you want a teardrop? Do you want a cattleman crease? You know, normally that's enough for people. But when you start talking about the stiffness of a hat, you know, you can get something that's sort of like this, which is quite stiff, but not too stiff. And you can get the shape there. But if you've got it a little bit softer, because the felt is a little bit thinner, then thanks, Ian. Then you can actually, you know, leave it so that you can actually form it yourself, so that you get it out of the cupboard. You look, when I wasn't into hatting, I still had one of these stand-up tabletop steamers, and so whenever I got a hat out, I give it a quick steam, and then I decide on the shape for the day, mold it into it, and wear it. You know, so it is that sort of fun and simple, and there's no right and wrong way. It's whatever you feel happy with wearing. You know.
Because you know, you notice, I mean, again, I feel like I'm gonna speak on behalf of collectors in general, but at least I'm gonna, and if you won't indulge me there, then I'll at least speak for either hat collectors or just myself. Either way, whatever it is, whatever it's worth to you. But I feel like there's a certain, and I say that by collectors because I feel like the watch community has that thing. Car guys, Paul, you mentioned that you were a car guy. That whole waxing, there's a little OCD in all of us, right? We have them to varying degrees. And I feel the crown is one of those areas that will exhibit. Your OCD will come out when you try to shape your crown.
Well, I was making some cattleman crown or open road hats recently, and I'm a member on the yep, you're right, Ian, it would, the Stetson Open Road Society website there, and because we couldn't get them in the UK, I've made a few, and in fact, I've since then Americans have asked me to make them. I've sent them over, but it's very funny how they're very critical on that site about how the crown is formed, and of course Stetson will form it by a mold, but people like myself will do it by hand. So and that's when things like a rolling pin comes into play. So my wife doesn't, well, she does know now actually, but she didn't know. We've got two sizes of rolling pin. One that's like it's made out of marble, which is really quite heavy, and then there's a wooden one which is a lot thinner. So both of them get into this hat studio and help me formulate some of the hat shapes. So I'm giving away a bit of a tip there, you know.
Yeah, and just so FYI, anything you can and say here could be used against you by a loved one.
Yeah.
So when you come on here, I don't make you sign a waiver, but whatever you share, it's not because, oh, that darn Luke made you say it. Paul sometimes chooses to reveal, and he's like, maybe I should have said that later on, but hopefully with the wife, everything's okay with you using the utensils.
Yeah, we've had the conversation, and I'm going to buy from my own shortly. But I'm just saying there are lots of things around the house that if you've got the time, look, it's a case of there's nothing on the television. I've got the time, and I'll just think about well, how can I shape a crown, and what can I use to help me do it?
Yeah. I mean, Ian knows. I mean, I think anybody that's gotten to our age knows that there's a little bit of relationship management that goes with everything, right? So it's part of being in a relationship, and it's kind of like that compromise. And I feel like the really successful couples are the ones that know when not to intervene, if that makes any sense.
Yep, no, it makes great sense. Do you know what? I went, my son and his soon-to-be wife actually went to the cinema recently. Yeah. And they saw a film which they recommended that my wife and I went to see, and it's called The Roses. We went to see it last night, and The Roses it's got Cumberbatch, whatever his name is,
Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's it. Yeah, in it, and it was absolutely fabulous. But it's about a couple that are how they met, and then how they go through their life and their career, and the whole dynamics of the relationship changes. And they're at each other's throats, and it's if any of your viewers want a bit of fun, a bit of light-hearted fun, it's worth having a look.
I'm gonna catch that. To be honest, I mean that's good. Yeah, that recommendation is good enough for me. I like I said, you're never too old to learn.
No, and you're never too old to laugh, and I think that's the thing. And if you have a day where you're not laughing, then it's a sad day.
Yeah, I agree completely, Paul. And like I said, this hobby is about fun, right? This channel is about fun. This is, I mean, again, the folks that come here regularly, and again, I've never asked anybody, are you having fun? But I just assume it, because if you keep coming back here, then you must have had a good time, and I want that. I encourage that.
Well, just as a bit of an update before we go, I know you want to talk about something specific today, and I've sort of prepared for that. But
no worries.
Just as an update, today something special arrived.
All right.
It's, that is the last roll of Petersham Grosgrain in bright orange in the country, right? From Automator Suppliers. And they said to me, what on earth are you going to do with that, Paul? Because they know that I do gentlemen's hats. I said, I've got this chap, he's in America. I said, I'm not quite sure, but he's into football. And I said, okay. And they think football, they think English football. I said, no, American football, or baseball, or whatever it is.
It's right, sports.
Yeah. And I said that they want me to trim the hat in this bright orange. And they said, whoa, okay, that's a first for us. So there you go. So at some point, either today or over the next day or two, let's reach out and get a call and go through all the details. But there's the hat there.
Yeah.
We've just got to decide, is it the trim? Is it the other? Is it around the, what do you want? I can finish it. Yeah. And of course, I've got the other, the Scott hat there, which, by the way, is beautiful. I mean, it's the more and more I look at it, the less and less I think it's been worn. Honestly, it's. Wow. I hope if you want it, I hope it's what you want, because it's a stunning hat.
Not just that, Paul. I saw another hat that's on there. We'll have that discussion as well. You have another hat on there, as long as it's still available. I haven't checked since I saw it. I'm like, okay, friendly reminder to make sure I asked Paul about this hat. Maybe that'll be a yet a third hat right there. And again, I do this because one, besides loving hats so much, is like I'm tickled. Like I said, I can't think of anything better than to support Paul and his craft. He's already given so much to this channel. You know what I mean? And that's why it's one of those things I'm like, it's the least that I can do to try to at least move some units.
Yeah, it's not something that I expect. I don't come on here for business. But if somebody likes what I do and they would like to wear one of my hats, then I'm always happy to do it. And I know everybody has to earn some money, but it's not about the money for me. It's more about the enjoyment that I get. I mean, I stay up some nights to quite late, midnight or more, just because I've got into a particular hat and I've got into a particular part of it, and you know, my wife's gone to bed and she's sort of saying, why is you're very welcome, Ian. Yeah. Why is that sewing machine going?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and but it's fun, it's enjoyment, and being creative. You know, it's I know you said about wanting to start your own brand at some stage, and how
Yeah.
you don't think that you'll make the hats, but you know what, it wouldn't hurt to try and either go to, there are 2 or 3 people that I know of, and probably lots more in
Yeah.
America, that run hat making classes, and it might be worth going along to those just to get appreciation. But there'll
Yeah.
be a way that you can get into it, and it's so
Yeah.
much you know, so much fun. And some of the best enjoyment is actually sitting down with somebody and creating what they have as a vision, and then turning it into reality for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not opposed to it. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes I underestimate my own abilities. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, and I'm sure that's the same process for a lot of folks, not just me. But I am somebody that's willing to take a chance. I'm kind of in the stage of my life. I'm like, well, why not? Right? It's kind of like the whole why can't me? Why not me? So yeah,
Well,
Paul, thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah,
That's one of those things where I'm like, it's always been in the back of my mind. I talked about starting my brand. Obviously, Good Luke's is, it's an unknown brand relatively, but it's still a brand, my brand nonetheless. And it's one of those things. And obviously, brands evolve, they rebrand sometimes. That might happen in the future, but for right now, I am Good Luke's the brand. And you know what? Who's to say that Good Luke's, a Good Luke's hat can't be one that's out there? And again, it doesn't have to be for everybody. Like I said, that's the nice thing about our hobby here, is that right now, between yourself, Paul, between Huffbud, between Hoskoff, between David Johnson, between Brian Forbes, what Kevin's putting out there with his KTG line, there's so many options out there. And it's one of those things where it's like I said, if you pursue it with passion first, it's hard to not be a success, right? I think.
Yeah, it is. It's and it's enjoyable. I mean, it's funny today. My hat day, if you like, or the hat part of my day today, I had an email come through from an agency in London, and they were looking for 1,000 trilbies to be made for the Cheltenham Festival. Now, the Cheltenham Festival is a big horse racing event, a bit like your Kentucky Derby in America, and obviously that level I can't do. And actually, I think they were probably looking for more of a wool hat that's of a certain budget. And again, that's not the market I'm in. But it's interesting that they found my brand. They saw what I was doing, and they reached out, and that's a compliment. I take that as a real compliment. You know, it was good. And the other thing was that I had another hatter who I've not met before, but is probably about 30 or 40 miles away from where I'm based here in the UK. And they reached out and said, look, I've seen what you're doing. It'd be great to have a coffee sometime and just chat hats. So I thought I'd go and see them, and then invite them onto the channel and say, look, you can come on and talk with Luke and be part of the chatter if you've got the time, and enjoy it.
Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm touched. Like I said, now you already put that in my ear, and I'm going to be asking, like, how'd that go? And obviously that's something that I love seeing, because in the end, we're just all hat nerds and hat lovers, right? And regardless of where we're at, we had that discussion before about a lot of the hatters that were a little bit more guarded, right? So obviously we're not going to try to force our way in trying to get, any of the secret. Not that we want them anyway, right? It's like, it's not why we're doing this. We're not doing this to steal a secret. We're doing this to kind of like, hey, you're in the craft, I'm in the craft. Let's talk, because I just enjoy that,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sufficiently able to make what I think are fairly nice hats, and my customers seem to think they're very nice hats. I don't need to have any more information. There is more equipment that I'd like to buy, but they're beyond my financial means at the moment. But actually, Ian's made a very good point there, Luke. Overestimating one's abilities can be a bad move. He's absolutely right, which is why I thought it was worth a. And I'll tell you how I turned the call round. I had the conversation about, look, I'm not in a position to do the 1,000 hats because of X, Y, and Z. Here are a couple of companies you could actually contact. However, if you'd like to have some really nice hats for one or two of the jockeys that are there as part of the prizes or something, let me know, and I'll be pleased to make some custom hats for them. And
Yeah.
just left it at that. So you never know. It could be they come back and say, do you know that idea you said about, we've got 6 races on. We're obviously gonna have 6 winners. Can you make 6 hats? Well, that will
Yeah.
be really doable.
Yeah, Paul, you just mentioned something that just blew my mind from a business standpoint, right? Only because I worked at a boutique market research firm, and
Yeah.
there were certain projects that there's no way that we could do it and do the job that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
But what we made a habit of is, because we knew folks, other folks in the industry, technically our competitors, right? But if we thought that they could do a better job than us, we had no problem recommending them. It wasn't something we got a kickback for. Sometimes we'd get work that was thrown our way because of that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, that time when you
Yeah.
did that,
Yeah.
here's this project.
Really good point. I know in some of my other businesses, I've had a similar situation where customers actually thought that perhaps I was at loggerheads with some of the competitors in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I said on many occasions, actually, no, I actually buy parts from them. They buy parts from me. We work on, performance-based projects and so on. No, we have social events together. I said, look, it's the perception of the marketplace that's dictated to each other rather than to us, that we're at loggerheads, and it's not the case.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, I'm sure, right? Every myth is kind of maybe rooted in some sort of truth. There might be some folks that operate that way, but I feel like, in my perception, is that it's the exception rather than the rule. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look,
So,
I've always been of the opinion that there's more pie out there, if you like. You can increase the marketplace, but you have to be smart about it.
right.
And which is what on my they say what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
But they on the business stuff that I do, it is very much, look, you've got to create your own opportunities and be prepared to look wider in your marketplace, which is why in the hat world, I thought that when I did my initial investigation into what sector I wanted, it just so happened that I was very keen myself on the hats that my grandfather wore, which was more in the 1940s, these type of hats. And that's what formulated my love for it. So when I looked at it, there were actually very few people in the UK that were still making hats with a high crown. They were making them with a sort of 10 centimeter crown, seemed to be the actual height. And it was also 10 centimeters at the back. So a very sort of traditional, very nice hat, but just not quite the thing I wanted. And so I seem to have carved out a small market, and it is a small market because, whilst I might do couple of hundred hats a year, it's not, that's nothing compared to what the whole market is, obviously. But it's, it's an important thing to me to keep up the style and build on that, and hopefully for people to learn that they do have a choice and they can buy things like this. But there are one or two companies that do the whole fashion image, if you like. They do the jackets, the trousers, the suits, and then the hats to match with the 1940s look. And they are few and far between, but they're about.
Basically the way I understand it is, again, we talked about the paradox of choice. The reason why it's a paradox is that we really do want to have choice, right? When I talk about the paradox of choice, it doesn't mean that having choice is a bad thing. It's kind of like, it's just a trick, in terms of writing papers. When I was doing academic research, we'd always talk about hooks. And I mentioned this on the live stream, but I'll repeat it. We have hooks for our papers, something that's kind of like, oh, this is a twist that will capture the reader. And one of those just happened to be like the paradox of choice and that whole concept. It's not something I came up with. It's just something that I read in a book called The Paradox of Choice by Schwartz. But the reason why it's a paradox, because everybody intuitively kind of realizes that we do want choices. When we support our brands, when we support Paul, we support Brian, we support Hoskov and Huffbud and DBarJ and Wolfbray and KTG, all the various hatters that I'm sure I missed out. When we support them to the degree possible, right? Maybe if you're in the US, it's easier for you to support a US hatter because maybe it's shipping, right? But if you're in the UK, you can, maybe then you support Paul, and and obviously if you have the money, then you support them all, right?
Yeah,
You collect the whole set, right? The completionist.
Well,
But like I said, you got to put that out there because you can never assume. Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
a nice thing. That's appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ian.
I happen to agree. Yeah, it's one of those things where like the more, and I'll take this even further, is that we tend to have as human beings a negativity bias, right? So like the few rotten apples spoil the bunch. But I find the more the more people I meet in this world, in person as well as electronically, I find that there's a way more good people out there than bad people. And you may disagree, but it's just one of those things, and it could just probably say more about me, Luke the person, than it does about everybody I've met. But I find that if I had to run the numbers, so to speak, and come up with a statistic, it would probably be much higher than a lot of people would realize. And maybe I shock myself if I had that data and I collected that data.
Yeah. No, I'd have to agree. I think fundamentally, people start life as being neutral, and then they grow with their surroundings, etc., and their influences. But we only really hear about things that happen that tend to be usually bad and usually interesting. I mean, it's refreshing to get some good stories on the TV or on the social media when they happen. But you're right.
Yeah, and that's part of the inspiration for this channel. The Good and Good Lukes is kind of like good news, good people, good vibes, right? It's kind of like that's, it sounds simple, but there is kind of a deeper meaning behind it. Obviously, I just put out, I kind of rebranded here with my my logo. I put in the Godfather themed Good Luke. So if you've seen my my new logo, actually it's not on YouTube, I guess. Oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not on here. I think I added to YouTube, but somehow StreamYard. It looks like I'm looking at the corner of my StreamYard software. I see my old logo, which was just me dressing up like one of the Blues Brothers. But if you look at my channel, you'll see that there's a Godfather themed Good Lukes, and I did that kind of strategically in that I don't know if that's going to be where the brand stays, right? So brands are living people. But I kind of, I think you kind of guessed I'm a huge fan of The Godfather by now, if you haven't imagined.
It's funny you should say that, because I'm just going to reach out for a hat that after our
Thank you, Ian.
discussions about The Godfather, by the way, I went away and I perfected this.
Ooh, wow. Is that, did you just create that, Paul?
Yeah, it's a heavyweight. Obviously, it's the Godfather's type Homburg, and it's made out of Western felt, 240 weights, and I just thought I'd knock it up because of having the conversation we had last week about The Godfather, seeing the images and things, and actually I had a customer that asked me, can you make a Homburg? I said, no, I haven't really made a Homburg. I said, look, I specialize in trilbies and fedoras. And then I thought last week, I thought, you know what? There's no reason why I can't make a Homburg. And in fact, the Homburg that you're interested in, the Scots one, I sat there and looked at it. I thought, well, I love this hat to look at. So what's stopping me? What's the problem? And it was working out how to put this trim on and how to actually get the shape and so on. And I sat there and worked it out, and this is the result. So I'm quite pleased.
Absolutely gorgeous, Paul. Gorgeous. Like that's a Homburg anybody would be proud to wear.
It's a bit out there, isn't it, with the color? But
like I said, I'd wear it. And like I said, and you mentioned like this could be like that might be one of those things where maybe your American consumers are going to be more likely to order that particular one. Yeah.
I mean, I've got a matching scarf in this color, so I think that'll tone it down a bit and take people's eye off of it. And then a big overcoat. I think it will be really, really nice for leading up to Christmas. Going out with something like this, it's very festive color. I think it will work. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because you were the one that put me onto The Godfather from the show, and I then changed it into a vision that Some people might like, some people might not. But here it is.
Well, art imitates life, which imitates art, right? It's the iterative fashion. I love it, Paul. Like I said, I'm already like thinking about like, okay, so there's going to be a future hat or a future Hamburg order, at least from Good Luke's. And I imagine that there's going to be other people that sees that hat and they're going to be like, I got to have that hat,
Well, it's just, I feel like a kid in a wow, thanks, Ian. I feel like a kid in a chocolate shop, and the reason is that there's so many ideas that I can have and color combinations and things, but it's when you get inspiration from people like yourself and other people, Ian, and some of the comments Ian makes and things, it takes you off on another tangent, and that's really exciting because then you start thinking, you can imagine I've got like I don't know, it must be 12, 14-foot dining room table, and I get all my hat felts out because they're all stored, and I get like 200 hat felts out, and I start looking at what's the right color, what's the right thickness, what's the right the shellac that's been put in there, the stiffness and all this sort of thing, and getting the materials right, then matching it. And I was saying to my wife that I'm probably the only gentleman in the south of England that's got probably over £1,000 worth of these trims, in my cupboard. That's sad, isn't it, when you think about it?
I don't, honestly, like I said, you're kind of, I'm sure that you're saying that, but myself, and I'm going to speak for Ian, but Ian obviously can chime in. You're probably like everybody's hat hero by saying that, you know what I mean? And I know that sounds weird and sounds like a little nerdy, but like everybody that wants to, that can't do that, they want to know that somebody out there is doing that because they're the ones that they want to buy from. Like, right? We want to buy from each other.
Yeah. It's look, it's a nice community, and I'm certainly enjoying my time in it. So good.
Yeah. It's let's see. Ian is safe for sure. So there you go. I knew my man Ian. Like I said, Ian is one of those. And you as well, Paul. Kind of like two brothers from another mother. Even though we come from different, obviously very different parts of the world. But I think that's the reason why we keep finding ourselves here is that, we find that kinship. Obviously, we're not the same people per se, but we have that common thread and we just enjoy this kind of conversation. It's just, I can't think of anything better, right? I went from a daily format to kind of having 2 weekly shows. And I got to tell you, during the week, I'm missing it. Like I'm missing it myself. And I'm like, and all that keeps me going is, okay, I got a show lined up. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to use that motivation and that desire to prepare for the show, even though I'm not somebody that really likes preparing a whole lot, right? The more, sometimes I can over prepare, and the show doesn't come out as organic. I've seen that because I rewatch my shows, and I like to keep it fresh. I like to keep it organic, and this is why I enjoy having you, Paul, and also Ian, because you guys keep it. It's almost like like I said, like a freestyle. Somebody that does a freestyle rap where they're doing it from the top of their head. And the audience appreciates it, not because it's the most clever and the most intricate rhyme scheme that they ever heard of. It's because they appreciate that it's off the cuff, it's extemporaneous.
Yeah, this certainly, our chats certainly aren't rehearsed, that's for sure. It's, I'm finishing one call. Oh, crumbs, it's 4:00. Right, let's get on the thing with Luke. And like I said before, it's lovely to come on, and with Ian coming on so regularly as well. It's just like a couple of lads having a bit of a chat, before the end of the day. Lovely,
Absolutely. And that's why I always tell Ian, just so you know, just because you're not on screen, you are an integral part of the show, besides being my moderator, because you are like the exemplar for those folks that just want to see, maybe they don't even want to interact, right? Maybe they don't even do what Ian does. They just want to see the show. And I welcome that. Any type of viewership here. If you just want to see two blokes here, or 3 blokes talking and interacting, 2 of them on video and 1 of them in the chat, I'm all for it. Like I said, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to tell you how to hat. I'm also not going to tell you how to view. So, Yeah, I'm having a great time. Thank you guys. So I mean, let's go right into like the topic at hand, only because I think I gave you guys a flavor in the group chat about what inspired this. And again, I have some stuff prepared, but I don't really want to that's my backup plan, as you guys always know. That's my contingency plan. This is like what I really am trying to get. And really, it was kind of like an innocent post. I said, okay, today I'm wearing my Borsalino Velour, and I wrote pre-bankruptcy Borsalino Velour, right? It's the only Borsalino. Like, if you guys haven't seen my my video, my dedicated video on this Borsalino Velour, this is probably, you guys all kind of heard some of my hat journey. I posted that on Facebook. I also posted it on the Fedora Lounge with my straw hat. It all started with a straw hat in Split, Croatia. That got me not passionate about straws. It got me thinking about felt hats. And all of a sudden, 1 became 2, became 5, became 20, became now almost 40, to be honest, because I added a couple, like I got a couple hats that I just came in. They were actually bigger size hats. Remember I told you, I try to make sure I get hats that fit me. These were 2 hats that like are much bigger. They're kind of like 62 centimeters. So they don't fit me. And I don't even think I want them to fit me. I'm just going to hold on to them. Maybe one day for a rainy day, either somebody will want them instead of me and they will offer me money for them. Or I will actually go and do the proper way of scaling them down. But that's like 5 whole centimeters, or at least 4 whole centimeters that I have to size it down with felt or with some kind of material. I usually use felt to make sure that it fits my head. But again, I saw those hats and I had to have them. So they came here from Pittsburgh, and I made a post about them. But you know what? And then I have 2 hats coming from Brian Forbes. They still haven't arrived yet. So once they arrive, and those are going to be with along with that red D-Bar J, those are probably going to be my 2 out there hats. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you've seen Brian Forbes' work and you caught that episode, one of my favorite episodes that we've done so far. The back and forth with you, me, and Brian was, to me, priceless, and it was an exemplar and kind of a little sneak preview of what I hope this channel could become, in hopefully in the near future. But even if it's farther out, I'm gonna really be tickled if we get more hatters on here. So like, Paul, if you can get your friend, if you guys strike up a conversation and you get them on here, obviously they're folks that know Robert Galt. They're folks that know, like I said, there's going to be a way, because of how we're all interconnected in this community. I may be having a viewer here that doesn't ever want to participate, but they know a hatter and they'll get them on here. Perfect. I'm good with that.
I think getting Robert Galt, you mentioned there, and he's a gentleman that I followed. I'll do that in just a second if that's all right, Ian. I've got a velour out here. Yeah. And that wasn't planned, by the way.
Exactly.
It does sound a bit contrived, doesn't it? But it wasn't. I was just. Robert Galt. He was a gentleman that inspired me, because I believe he's gone on the hatting journey later in his life, and I think he's in his 80s. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but he's in his 80s, and he operates from home. He's put together some really nice hats, but then he's videoed it, and he's put together a series of videos so that people can, even if you're just interested in hats, you can look at those. And his videos. I purchased the course. I did the course, and I learned 1 or 2 bits from it, having already knew some things. But sometimes it's nice to get reinforcement that what you're doing it the right way. But and that's what inspired me, as well as I'd started up my YouTube channel by then, and I was doing some of the bits and pieces. But actually, seeing what Robert was doing inspired me greatly to get on and do that. And now I'm at 105 videos or something. But I think Robert would be great to get on here, because he's that little bit older, more mature, got some great hats, and it'll be nice to hear about his journey, really.
Well, Paul, this was not, again, talking about unplanned. Okay, I don't know how to put this without but Robert and I have interacted. He did not, I guess, take a shine to me.
All right.
I'm going to leave it at that. Again, I know his reputation. I never engaged in that. So remember I mentioned that there were certain times where I posted and I've gotten negative feedback. Robert happened to be one of those. And I was very gracious to him. I said, I apologize. I didn't mean anything ill about it. And I kind of felt like I screwed that up without intending to. So like Robert, if Robert ever sees this, one, I apologize again. It wasn't one of those things that I intended to post without permission. It was, and I mentioned this before, and I'll repeat it. Sometimes with my ADHD, right? I'm kind of like self-diagnosed. I haven't been formally diagnosed. I'm probably going to try to get that done, only because I feel like I should probably just stop and just do it. But sometimes what happens is with the ADHD and with sometimes I rush into things without going through the proper channels and posting on various Facebook groups, and I still do it. So the ones that have asked me to stop, I have stopped. And then what I've done is, and again, nobody really probably is interested, but I'm saying it anyway because I don't have anything to hide. For the folks that had problems with it, what I've done is with no malice, I've left the group. Not because I didn't value the group anymore, I had any ill feelings. I left the group because I didn't want, and if you know how Facebook works, when you join a lot of groups, it will tell you what groups you last posted in. So when you leave it and I don't post there again, it will say, Luke, you posted here 2 months ago or a month ago. Then I know not to repost there. I don't know why, if I leave the group, it gives me an option to post there, but it does. I don't know. That's one of those things that Facebook does that to kind of catch you. And I might do it by mistake in the future. But I try to watch because I post to, let's say, usually about 14 groups to get the channel out. And Robert's group, it's a group that he runs with a gentleman called Brent Denatly, I believe his name is. I know both of the gentlemen from Fedora Lounge, but I don't know them personally. So Robert was the one that engaged me and, had some choice words for me. And I apologize. I didn't engage. You know what I mean? I know his reputation. I never wanted to come across as disrespectful, but I do know his work. And there's so many people that love his work, including myself. And, if Paul, if you know him a little bit better.
No, I don't know. No, I don't think I've ever spoken.
Yeah. If somebody out there that watches this knows Robert better and can kind of advocate for me, if you care to, I'm not asking, it's not a request. I'd love to have Robert on here. And I don't I've had worse, trust me. It's not like he cursed me out. But it was one of those things where he kind of thought he didn't know me from a can of paint, like Brian told me. Like Brian Forbes said, hey, look, when you reached out to me, I didn't know you from a can of paint. I happened to go say, I didn't know you from Adam. Yeah. He didn't know me, and he probably still doesn't know me, and that's okay. I know him, and I know his reputation. That's why I never brought it up until now, Paul, because I just wanted to make
sure. I got to know of him through a supplier here in the UK. Yeah. They do a project together. I had a look, and I reached out. I bought the course. And I got good stuff from it. And I don't know the gentleman. I look at his posts with awe at some of the stuff he does, and that's it. But
I'd love to have him. Like I said, regardless of that, it's just one of those things where I say this because if somebody knows him and then decides that they're going to reach out, he may decide I don't want to have anything to do with that guy because that way you're not going in there blind. I do that because I value, one, I carry myself just the way I carry myself on here offline. It's not like I don't get mad at people. I could have easily if it was 20 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago, somebody says that to Luke and they'll get a few choice boards back, and we'll just agree never to talk to each other. But Luke now that's closer to 50, you could probably say some nasty things to me and I might just smile and walk away and just say, hey, I understand. And that's what I did. So just a lesson out there for you kids out there. Right. Is that old saying that never argue with somebody because, people that are watching you don't know the story. Right. So I tried to take that to heart and not argue with somebody. It was via private message. It wasn't like it was out there. But it'd be funny that if Paul came on here and we could talk about that, and hopefully in a very amusing fashion, right? And say, hey, remember that time where we had the interaction? I love that, to be honest, and I welcome him anytime.
Cool. But getting back to what Ian was asking about the velour, this is I got this out. I think I was showing you a blue color the other day, and it was one of the Caplins I had. And this is one I bought from FEPSA, not really knowing. I've never made a velour hat before, and I've got a few fabrics. I've got like a leopard skin fabric, which is made out of rabbit. That's weird. I've got what is it called? Some other really fancy woolen ones like merino wool and some others. And this came along with it. And velour, it's one of those fabrics that's like a knitted fabric, but it's very, very soft. So it's almost like a beaver felt to the touch, but it's not going to have the waterproof qualities of the beaver. So I think this one's very, very supple. As you can see, it's I don't know whether what I've got to do is find out if I add steam to this, is it going to stiffen up? Because if it's not going to stiffen up, and I'm going to make I mean, most velours will be for ladies' hats, I guess. But I'm thinking of making a pretty nice sort of gentleman's fedora out of this. And being velour, that will be something quite nice to wear with a dinner suit or something that's a bit different. So a nice blue sort of fedora with maybe blue to match dark blue trimmings and dark blue around the edges. It might look quite stylish, but I haven't quite done it yet. So to answer your question, it's a synthetic material that is a sort of blend that's made to feel very, very soft.
Yeah. And I only own 2 velour hats. If you guys are new to the stream, I have this Borsalino Velour, which is my very first velour hat. Honestly, this might be the second felt hat that I've ever bought, right? My first one was a hat that I no longer have. I've talked about this hat. It was a Dobbs Hamburg Golden Coach from the 1960s that I sold to a gentleman in Utah, only because he saw my photos. The gentleman, like I mentioned, Ian says, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ian. The great question, by the way. So the gentleman saw that Hamburg and saw me wearing upside down and said, hey, this hat, tell me about it. And I did. And then he said, would you ever sell it? And I'm like, well, I wasn't planning to, but it's let me know what you got. And I think at this point I had sold a hat already. So we kind of already knew. He knew that I was trustworthy, and we made the deal. And he owns the hat, and he's happy with the hat. But this hat, this velour hat, is probably my second that I purchased. And you can imagine that I'm like just learning of the great hat brands, and I came across this velour, Borsalino Velour, and I'm like, okay, this is mine. Like, there's no way I'm gonna let this go. So I got it. The folks that I bought it from were so nice. They shipped it. It just was perfect. Everything was perfect about the transaction. The hat, if you've seen the photos of the hat, I think those photos were actually the photos that I saw when I purchased the hat. It looked like it never been worn, at least the inside. So I'm like, wow. Like for me, I was on cloud 9 when I got the hat. And then obviously, again, if you like Borsalino the way like Paul and I talk about Borsalino, and a lot of folks, we're not the only ones that rave about Borsalino. It was one of those things. I'm like, it was like a light shining on this hat. And I hate to like be over the top about it, but it's just describing how I felt. And again, if you know me and you've seen some of my advice, to me, the most important thing about any hat is the way it makes you feel in general, but especially when you put it on. And when I put this on, I was like, okay, this is it. It just goes to show you.
Yeah.
And the reason why, again, the motivation behind this is that I posted this up on the Fedora Lounge, and then I did my usual. I post on the Fedora Lounge, then I'll follow up on Facebook, and I got a lot of great feedback. But on the Fedora Lounge, again, this is kind of like a lot of the hardcore hat nerds hang out on the Fedora Lounge. not all of them, obviously. You know, I put Paul. I have never asked you if you were on there, but it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? But you find so much information. I owe a lot of my hat education to the gentlemen, not just gentlemen. So there are some females on there, but in general, the gentlemen of the Fedora Lounge, in particular, their hat sub forum. Shout out to you guys. So there were two gentlemen that I engaged with yesterday. First was a gentleman called Nathan, who goes by the Lost Cowboy. He's somebody that I have interacted with before. If you've seen some of my previous videos, I did a video on a hat that had jump wings on the side. They were military jump wings. This hat. That's it. This hat. I just happen to have it close by. So you can see those military jump wings. I mentioned this before. It was Nathan, the Lost Cowboy, that mentioned that. I had no idea what I was looking at. But he said, "Are you in the military? Those are jump wings." So that got me down the rabbit hole on there. So Nathan, shout out to you. You also followed up on my post where I announced this hat as a pre-bankruptcy Borsalino Velour from it's from the early to mid 1970s. It's as close as I can get on a date with this hat. Based on the
label. Yeah, if it's got a label in it, you should be able to tell the dates.
Correct. Yeah. And essentially what happened was for this hat, Paul, it was right before the year was printed on hats. I'm just assuming that that's what you were referring to.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I don't have an exact year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like right before Borsalino started doing that. So based on like a gentleman called Stefan who posts by Stuart, there's also another gentleman called Danielle Tanto. I believe it's Danielle Tanto. They are like the two Borsalino experts, resident experts on the Fedora Lounge. And between the two, I was able to assist me in creating a timeline to date this hat right around the early to mid 70s. So just for you folks that are kind of like, if you've watched my channel up to this point, I'm kind of like a little bit of a hat history nerd, at least a junior one. But I go and I pay homage to the folks that really know, like the Hatted Professor, Stefan, Danielle, and all the other great folks that reply and give me the time of day, to ask my questions. A lot of times unsolicited. They will go and say, you know what, you're right. Or they'll tell me, no, Luke, actually, I understand how you came up with that, but this is what is actually, and I have no problem with that. I love learning. So I posted this hat. And Nathan, the Lost Cowboy, immediately replied and say, that it's funny that you use the term pre-bankruptcy. Is that something that's used? Like I understand what you mean, but I really don't understand why people use that term. And we got on a discussion, and then we had another gentleman, Jeff. I'm going to call him Jeff. I don't want to mention his last name because he may not be comfortable. But Jeff. Who posts under, I believe, Jeff Garf in the Fedora Lounge. He replied because I mentioned to Nathan, I can't speak because, again, the discussion was talking about pre-bankruptcy versus otherwise, and is there a quality difference? Nathan thought it was basically a bunch of marketing speak. I didn't want to speak on it because I only own this one Borsalino. I don't own another example, let's say that's later, right? I only own this one because I haven't found another Borsalino that I'm willing to buy. But I told him, I said, listen, this is what I've heard, and this is what I can tell you about my hat. But somebody else here, like either Steve Goldstein, who's a gentleman that runs Bencraft Hatters in Brooklyn. He's also on the Fedora Lounge. Either he or Stefan could jump in here and then speak on this. And it turned out that Jeff, who I actually bought. Shout out to Jeff. Jeff, one second, Paul. Excuse me. Let me see if I can grab this because I feel like it's pertinent. Jeff is also the gentleman that sold me this hat case. So, this is a hat case that I want to plug Jeff because Jeff is not a hatter, so to speak. But he sells these cases. He is an individual that merits your support. I bought this only on his reputation. And again, I haven't tried it out, but I will let you know how it goes. But Jeff is the very same gentleman that I purchased it from.
Yeah,
he actually gives you a discount if you're a Fedora Lounger. So
I've got a similar one that's a Borsalino, and
right,
it's a backpack as well. But I must admit, I wouldn't use it. But I think younger kids might use it. But I bought it because of the fact it's got Borsalino on it.
Correct. The power of branding, right?
Again. Yeah, I mean, somebody who buys a Borsalino from me might want to buy the backpack. But to be honest, I haven't even advertised it, so maybe missing a trick there. Yeah.
Well, I'll take a look at it, Paul. Again, Paul, we talked about, just full disclosure, we talked about the Scots of London. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Scots of London, right.
Yeah.
His Hamburg. Again, Paul offered to take it off the shelf. I didn't want to, right? So there's that time period between if somebody came out and offered Paul money right away, and Paul, now that I didn't mention this particular, I said use your best judgment. But what I really meant by that, if somebody had money in hand, I'd want you to sell it right away to them because, well, one, I'm just like at the point where like one more hat, right, is probably, and who knows, maybe that might be their only hat, right? I'd hate to take away somebody's Grail hat from them. And then obviously I didn't even hand you any money yet. So, that I kind of operate on that only because, again, I know how it is, right? I've been there also on the other side when I see a hat and somebody tells me, well, I'm holding it for somebody. I'm like, but I have money right now. Maybe we can call them. Can we call them, please? I don't know. Maybe, like I said, I'm weird like that. It's just one of those things where in my mind, I feel like I've taken somebody else's hat from them and like I put some bad energy out in the world. So if you don't steal this hat from me, by the time we looks like Paul's making some inways towards my hat. So you might be, that window might be closing. Plus I got my eyes on another one of Paul's hats. So, fair. This is all fair, right? You watch this.
I get up in the morning and I never know if I'm going to talk to anybody about buying a hat or whether somebody's going to buy it, outright on eBay or on my own website or whatever.
Yeah.
And all of us are the same that are in this game. And it's lovely because you start a relationship with somebody that you may not have met before. It's always nice to reach out to them just to check the size and whatever, and they're happy with the style and so on. I mean, it's a nice thing. And look, I've got your Scots one here. I'm not bothered about anybody else buying it. It's fine. I'm very easygoing about it all. Yeah,
Paul, thank you. You're like I said. I folks are probably tired of me just praising you, but I do that because again, it's not lost on me. I'm touched by the fact that you come here and share your time with us. Again, that's the most valuable thing you have, and the fact that you spend it here with us, with me and Ian right now. That's the best gift you can ever give me, and I just want to repay you back. So
you're very welcome. I mean, it's as much of a relaxation for me as well. So I appreciate it.
No problem. So, I mean, back to the topic at hand. So this engendered a conversation, and I never try to get involved on, right? Because I felt like when and Nathan probably didn't mean it, but when he mentioned that, I felt like, oh boy, I want to stay out of this. I love Borsalino, right? And I love all Borsalinos. I love the brand so much that I didn't mean to imply that if you didn't have a pre-bankruptcy Borsalino, right, that you didn't have a great Borsalino. I don't know that to be true. Right?
Yeah, I mean, what my experience has been is that I think it was about 2017 that Borsalino hit troubles before then, but I think 2017 when it hit the fan, so to speak. And I don't know the full story, but I can only imagine that somebody must have brought them out of liquidation or administration or whatever. And the accountants of the investors that would have done it would have looked at why did it fail, and it may well have been that over the years they were making some terrific felts, and maybe there was some corners to be cut, there were some changes to be made, there was some, if you look at a Kaplan, one of these, if I look at these things, this is huge. Right. So if I make a Fedora out of this, I'm probably going to lose about 2 or 3 inches, around here. Now, you could say, if you're an accountant, well, that's going to be thrown away.
Yeah.
Why don't we just make this as the blank smaller, and that will
Right.
actually mean it costs us less money to produce the blank, because a blank like this, which is 50/50 rabbit beaver, would probably be £150 just for the felt, so I can only imagine that's happening. But my experience of looking at the hats, so the Borsalino behind me is a pre-2017. I think it's a 2005.
Yeah.
Just there's a little label in there, and it's no, it's a 1997.
Yeah.
So it's a very lightweight, and it's a lovely felt. And the thing with them is that the older ones, you can bring them up really, really nicely. But also on top of that, I've had some really nice. They do it like an 80-gram weight, foldable, rollable trilby,
Yeah.
and I've had 2 or 3 of those now, and they're absolutely beautiful. And they've been made since they come out of bankruptcy. So I think it's like everything. What you'll find is different qualities of hats. And right now, if you look at the range of Borsalino hats, it might be that somebody looks at a hat that's made to a certain price or spec that is in an area of specification and price that maybe prior to the bankruptcy they wouldn't have necessarily done. I don't know, but I would say the first thing is buy a hat because you like the hat, right? And it looks good. Secondly, that it's within your budget so that you're not stretching and so on. Okay.
Right.
And then if it happens to be, pre-2017, okay. If it's happening post, well, that's okay. Doesn't matter, does it?
That's right. Again, Paul raises the most important. If there's one thing I want to hammer home, is that there's, again, no wrong way to do this hat hobby. You guys all heard the story, or at least some of you might have, about how I got started in the fine hats. It started off with a not so fine hat. I still own that cheap blue straw in Croatia, and that hat was just as pivotal as any of my hats because it was the one that got me started. I appreciate my Borsalino because of other non-Borsalino hats, right? I mean, again, there's diversity, right? Of felt, like that's something that we learned here with Paul and his knowledge. There's hats out there that are going to be various qualities, and one person's trash is going to be another person's treasure. I mentioned that before. Morgan, one of my other faithful moderators, just doesn't happen to care for Borsalino. She doesn't disparage them, but she just said, when I got spoiled by other felts, and then the Borsalino just doesn't have the same luster. Again, to each of their own. Like that's the great thing about having Stetson, Borsalino, Lock & Co., all the other great manufacturers that still exist and still make hats, so that we can all sample and appreciate them for our own. And guess what? Just because you buy it doesn't mean you need to keep it, right? You may buy it, never wear it, and you just want to keep it, or you may want to rehome it to somebody else, and it might be their one hat that they buy.
Yeah, I mean, there's many people that will buy hats and put them on the wall as ornaments,
Correct.
And it's you're not married to a hat, Okay, it's a very interesting thought about if you pay a certain price to a hat for a hat, are you going to get your money back? And actually, I'll show you something now. You can probably see it in the corner of my eye.
Great point.
We haven't spoken about this. This is one I picked up this last week. This is the hat by Nick Fouquet.
Yeah.
So,
it's gorgeous.
Nick Fouquet makes this hat, and he sells it for about $800.
Yeah.
And it's I found it in the UK on one of the auction sites, and it was under £100 for me to buy. Okay, I've done a little bit of refurbishment of it, but it's a beautiful hat with a Rowan very, very soft sweatband, his own sort of coconut design interior there.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
It's a lovely hat. But you think, somebody paid $800 for that. So I think it's $770 or something. And to think that somebody somewhere has lost quite a lot of money. And I would only say that that's been used maybe 3, 4, 5 years, but only in the summertime. So it's not overly used. It's just of that age. And so I think it's like any hobby. You have to be prepared to invest and then perhaps lose some money. But on the other hand, with things like when you're buying secondhand, This represents great value. You know, if it's in your
Right.
size, in your color and shade, and you'd have bought it anyway, why not? It's like I've got
Yeah.
quite a few Lock and Co hats that I've bought for my own collection, and
Yeah.
they're stunning hats, you know. But I couldn't, to be honest with you, I couldn't afford to pay £600, £700, £800 for the hat new. I'll be
Correct.
straight, you know.
Yeah.
I think my wife would have a problem with me doing that. But buying them second hand, then you know, and you know that if chips is down, you can put it up again and get at least your money back, if not make a
Correct.
little bit of money on it. Then it's a great enjoyment and investment.
Yeah, Paul, you described it, and then you've gone into detail before about the process, that you did with vintage hat. You were able to start off by getting a good deal, maybe doing some refurbishment to the hats, and then reselling them and to recoup your costs and make a little bit money to reinvest into the hobby. And I
Yeah.
think if there's a way, right? So like, there's so many different ways for one to get into this. And I think there's just so much good information that you just shared right there that I feel like at some point I'm gonna start going through my videos and start clipping out some of these things. This would be something I would clip out because I feel like it's a roadmap for those folks that maybe feel like they don't have enough money, right? They want to start off with a Nick Fouquet or a Huffbud or a Hornskov, but I'm like, why pigeonhole yourself, right? And very few people, right? You talked about you and Brian about sharing about your love of the Rolls Royce. I'm pretty sure I can speak that for both of you was probably not your first car.
No,
Yeah, it's
no,
just
not
not
at all.
something that
I didn't own it, by the way. It was my company
yeah,
car, but you know,
exactly.
but yeah, I mean, I've had some pretty funky cars. I mean,
Yeah,
even I had a soft top G wagon, and that was great fun,
yeah,
and a few other sort of sporty Porsches and things, and God knows what else. But I'm old now. I've gone through that. I've done it. My wife
exactly.
is very happy that I've let that go. Although I do have one in the garage, but we won't go there. And you know, I've got to move
Yeah,
on. And it's the same with hats. You know,
yeah,
so I know that talking to some of the guys on some of the forums, they get worried. I sold a hat to a gentleman recently, and he was worried to go home with it because of what his wife might say. And
yeah,
I checked in with him sort of 3 or 4 weeks after, and he still hadn't told her.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's again, I've experienced that as well on the selling side. I haven't
yeah,
experienced it on the buying side as much. So I thank goodness that I don't ever have to be afraid to come home with something. But I understand, and nobody that is in a relationship doesn't understand or empathize with that plight. It's just one of those things where I'm like, well, don't like. I'd like to not read about you in the paper if at all possible.
yeah,
It's a tough
yeah,
way to go, right?
yeah.
But you know what?
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, the nice thing is that usually when you get to our age, you kind of like you know yourself enough, and you kind of already set the tone, right? Like this is just the kind of guy I am. Please accept me. Please love me for the way I am because I don't know how to be anybody else.
No, that's very true. I know we're talking about Borsalino today, and I can remember
Yeah,
sitting down with my wife one day when a hat had turned up, and it was for one of my videos, and I wanted to restore it. And it was a beautiful black
yeah,
Borsalino, and when I got it, it was looking a little bit tired. And then when I'd restored it, she couldn't believe it, and it was
yeah,
we just sat down and looked and talked, and I said, yeah, and she couldn't believe how. As a lot of people can't, when you see a hat that's in
yeah.
a bit of a state through being on the top of a wardrobe, you know, it's got crushed, it's got
Right.
dusty, and it's been used, it's maybe a bit smelly, and when you go through it, you give it a good steaming, you deal with, you know, you take the isopropanol and clean a lot of it, you clean the leather, you re-dye the leather if you need to, you know,
Right.
renew the gros grain and so on. And the fact is, the base you're working with, the beautiful felt, is something that, as long as it hasn't been damaged, you know, this is the thing. It's through either holding the pinch there, or
Yeah.
of some of the older ones, you know, you get the clothes worm, whatever it's called, you know, and that can eat into the
Yeah.
the felts, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
once that happens, you really struggle to do anything with them. But no,
Yeah.
the it's a nice thing to be able to share the stories like Borsalino. In fact, when I've done the videos, what I've done is I've gone on to ChatGPT and also onto the Borsalino site. I've got information about their history and I've put it in there because a little snapshot of what it's about is nice for people because they can see the heritage and you know why do people talk about such a brand? You know what's going on there? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you guys haven't joined us before, Paul and I happen amongst many things. We share a really love of the process and the essentially the power of brands and branding, right? So obviously you start off admiring a lot of the great historical brands that have existed over time. And then you use those learnings, right? Because a lot of times that wasn't an accident. I would say most times those great brands were not an accident. Usually there's some sort of creator. It could have been the person with the last name of the brand that drove. We talked about John Kavanagh and John B. Stetson and Ezra Mallory. Those were gentlemen that had a vision for creating something that was going to ultimately and did outlast their lives. And they created a legacy with it. That's the power of brands. That's why Warren Buffett constantly talks about how he invests in brands, right? He met Charlie Munger, who's no longer with us, right? If you guys know Warren Buffett, then you probably also know his good buddy and essentially lifelong friend. Well, not lifelong, but they eventually met at some point and became business partners. Charlie Munger was a lawyer that was probably the one person that Warren Buffett greatly credits for changing his perception, his investing strategy. Because Warren Buffett, if you follow his history, he started off as somebody that would invest in brands that were almost dead, right? He would make the analogy to, it was a cigarette butt that you found for free on the floor that had one free puff, but it was free. And Charlie Munger, who was probably about maybe 10 years, I want to say he was about 10 years older or a little bit more than Warren Buffett, and just recently passed away. He was the one that said, listen, that I understand that, but you got to understand that it's better to buy a good brand at a good price than a crappy brand at basically free.
Yeah,
and it revolutionized his approach. I'm fascinated by that. So if you haven't seen anything of Warren Buffett, there's an excellent documentary on you can find it free on YouTube. It was done by HBO. It's called Becoming Warren Buffett. Completely recommended. It will, if you didn't know or appreciate Warren Buffett, it's hard not to after you watch that. Becoming Warren Buffett. It's one of my Luke's recommendations. And you may not like it, maybe you hate it, but let me know. If you guys watch it and you let me know, hey, I watched that thing, I thought it was bunk.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I just happen to geek out about that. So if you find that we have similar tastes, maybe you'll like that. But you know, the whole point of this is that Borsalino is one of those brands that's iconic. And when I had this discussion with Nathan and Jeff, I kind of stepped a little bit aside because I did not want to be the guy that said something wrong about Borsalino and now I had to backtrack. You know what I mean? It's better to be like proactively and preempt that than have to backtrack afterwards and say something that you have to kind of retract, right? Everybody almost always remembers the first thing you said, right? They'll print the retraction, but nobody remembers that, right? So on the back page of the paper. So, you know, I always talk when I used to, Paul, I might have not mentioned this, but one of my previous jobs, I worked with police officers and firefighters here locally in Northern Virginia. And we would do training. So we would have to bring in firefighters from other neighboring jurisdictions to train them to be able to rate our firefighters and our police officers for promotion, for their promotional examinations. So one of the things that we would always say is because, right, just like the hat world, the police world and the firefighter world, especially when they're neighboring jurisdictions, they all know each other.
Right.
So we would advise them, listen, you may or may not, chances are you probably know a lot of the people that you're going to see on video today. Make sure that you don't say, once you leave this room, right, and maybe somebody bombs their test, make sure that you don't say anything that you're not comfortable seeing in print on the news the next morning. As long as you don't violate that, we think we're going to be okay. Like, we just wanted to kind of make sure that we hammered home the seriousness of the task, because these guys, they all know each other. Before you know it, they're on Facebook and they're texting each other. Hey, Bob, I saw you blow that test for the captain the other day. What a joke! And then all of a sudden, like, we have to kind of go and do,
damage limitation.
Yeah. So don't put us in that spot, please. So it's one of those things where, like, I had the privilege of working with public safety officials. I have the privilege of working with military members as well as nurses in previous jobs. And it's just one of those things, as a industrial organizational psychologist, I study work and work behavior, and it happens in context. So usually in all my jobs, I would work with special populations, and that happened to be the order that I worked with them with. I worked with military first, then with nurses, and then with public safety officials. And now I just work with HR folks. I happen to be one, but I work with other HR professionals now. So it's interesting to see, like, the similarities as well as the differences in the various levels of work. It just gives you a new appreciation for the field.
Cool.
But yeah, back to the discussion. Luckily, my friend Jeff, thank you, Jeff, if you ever watch this, he jumped in because Jeff happens to own several Borsalinos. He's also good friends with well, I'm going forward. He is familiar with Steve Goldstein as well as with Kevin Gerber, right? Because they both came up in the conversation. I brought up Steve. I didn't bring up Kevin, but Nathan brought up Kevin because Kevin did a video on this, on Borsalino and the idea of the pre-bankruptcy Borsalino. So Nathan kind of chalked it up to marketing speak. Jeff he acknowledged it, but he also kind of said, hey, this is, regardless of what you think, it is a perception that's out there. And then ultimately we had a great back and forth exchange on the Fedora Lounge. And what Nathan came away with that, one, he thanked us both for our input. And then Nathan made the mention was, for him, pre-bankruptcy means something different, right? For him, now that he had that conversation with myself as well as Jeff, pre-bankruptcy is that, for him, is a Borsalino that's made between 1987, which is when I believe the original family sold the Borsalino brand. So a pre-bankruptcy is any Borsalino that's between 1987, right, when the family sold, and 2017, before they declared bankruptcy, meaning the brand. So that's pre-bankruptcy, and I think that's actually a really good definition, to be honest. So maybe what Luke should have said is, this is my pre, or maybe Luke should have never said anything, right? Luke should have said, this is my Borsalino. And that's probably what I'll do from now on, is I'll say, this is my Borsalino from the early to mid 1970s. And I'll leave that bankruptcy business, because I don't know. I just felt like, oh, did I get myself in hot water here by saying this?
It doesn't really add anything unless you're enthusiastic and you want to discuss it. But you know what? Yeah. It's not going to change anything. It's a company that's that clearly worked very, very hard over the years to build a product. Correct. The brand came along with the product, and they hit some hard times. And those hard times probably revolved around the population going towards travel in cars, and all the reasons why hats generally went down in sales. They were hit because they had hundreds of people working for them, and somebody was kind enough to come along and take them over in '87 and work through, and they hit tough times. So we're lucky to have the brand still. There's so many older brands that, if you look at London and you look at a lot of the secondhand hats that we find on the market are so and so of Piccadilly, or so and so of Oxford Street. And these retailers, or these sellers of hats, are no longer there. And a lot of it, a bit like Harrods and Selfridges, they will go along to various manufacturers of hats and ask them to make them their own brand hats. And they'll still sell those. But a lot of the other, whether they're fashion shops or whether they were hat shops, it's another matter. They've gone by the by, and you can walk down Oxford Street, Regent Street, Jermyn Street. Those are the sort of main sort of fashion type streets, Jermyn Street and Regent Street in particular, and in between. And you can find lots of different brands based around there still. But that's the sort of epicenter, if you like, of what's happening in the central part of the UK, of London. Yeah. But it's sad, really. But I think for me, Borsalino has got a romanticism around it, and I think the felt is quite different to the touch to other hats, and you either like it or you don't, and a lot of people that haven't had a fine hat and are lucky enough to get hold of a reasonably priced second-hand Borsalino will probably not go back. They just think, yeah, this is absolutely superb. And because when you add a bit of steam to it and you give it a bit of form just by manipulating it with your hands, they actually come back into, even if you haven't got the equipment, to a really nice shape. And so it's worth getting a good hat brush, getting a kettle with some steam or a steamer, and buying that old Borsalino. I can't express enough, if you're just getting into hats, how it's worth the investment, because you've got a great felt to start off with. As long as it's not damaged, then you've got a good base.
Yeah, I completely agree with Paul's recommendation. One thing that Jeff and who I alluded to before, right? So Jeff happens to have intimate knowledge of the Jewish community. He's a member of the Jewish community, right. So Nathan had one hat, right? The Lost Cowboy. He posted a hat that looked like a Western style hat. That was his Borsalino. That was a later one. Jeff responded by saying, "Oh, yes, I'm familiar with that." That actually turned a lot of people off to Borsalino at some point, because a lot of those hats were made for the Jewish community, and they were done with a felt that was a very a Western weight felt. And for people that wanted to have a supple Borsalino, they were getting these probably used, right? They probably found this used Western weight Borsalino that was originally made for the Jewish community. Again, for those folks that are not as familiar, and again, I'm not an expert. I grew up in New York. We have a lot of Jewish community, especially a strong Hasidic Jewish population. But those gentlemen this is what Jeff opined, they wear these hats every day. It's kind of like the Amish. Jeff made the analogy to the Amish. These hats have to be made tougher and less supple, because they're not going to be worn once and put up. They're going to be worn every single day. There's going to be a lot of sweat that goes through that hat, and it has to be pretty much a tough hat. So what happens is, if they find their way into the used market, you may be buying a Borsalino. Let's say you buy it online without being able to feel it. You're just thinking, "Oh wow, I can't wait to get this Borsalino in my hand that I got it for a song," and it turns out to be one of the Western weights that they made for this community. You may come across with a perception, if that's your only Borsalino, that Borsalino is just not a great brand, but it's apart from it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I bought one religious hat without realizing it once before. And I didn't, but I could have quite easily deconstructed the hat, cut down the actual brim, and made it into something that was more like a fedora as we know it, with maybe a 2.5 inch brim, 6 centimeters, something like that, rather than the wider brims. But you're right about the weight. I mean, they are stiffer, and that's fundamentally, as a hatter, you are asking your client, how often are you likely to wear it, and what are you going to use it for? Because if you're just using it to go from the car into the office and maybe out at the weekends, then most of the time people will carry a collapsed umbrella. So I keep a little tiny umbrella. It's about that long. It collapses in my backpack, and if it rains, then either I can take the hat off and put it in my rucksack, or I can put an umbrella up and protect it. Because let's be fair, we invest so much time, effort, and money into our hats that we don't really want to get them wet.
Right.
However, if you're wearing one every day and you just don't think about it because it's part of your dress code, because it's a religious thing or something, or you're a worker on a farm or a ranch in America, then you need something that's a lot tougher. And of course, that's the heavier weight. And if you're not aware of it, it's quite strong. But you know what? I mean, I've made a few, heavyweight Western weight fedoras and things, and I absolutely love them. I think they are different, of course, but for the darker days in the winter, they're so much warmer and nice. But if you've got a wide collection and you don't mind, widening it that bit further, I'd encourage people to do that. But
Yeah.
from Borsalino's point of view, it is the lighter weight. And when you get hold of an 80-gram roll up Borsalino, and they're about 400 and something pounds, those hat new, but they just feel like buttery smooth in your hands.
Yeah.
And when you roll it up, it's the only other hat that's very similar to that is one that Lock & Co do, or at least the only ones that I've found over the years. And they make a more of a country hat that you can also roll up and put in your pocket, of a similar price. And they are both a similar weight of felt, and they're just stunningly lovely. You know, they are very popular still. And if you can buy one secondhand, they represent good value. But you know, it's one of those hats that people get, and of course they tend to keep, because you know, if you can roll up a hat and stick it in your briefcase or backpack or pocket, take it out, and within 2 seconds it's gone back into the shape of a beautiful trilby or a fedora. Well, you wouldn't want to get rid of it, honestly.
It's like a transformer, right? It's like as a kid you had a transformer that could do, you know, like it could be whatever I want.
You've got to see it and feel it, and go through the process I've just told you, unwrapping it, to understand just how good that is. But the problem is, every time I get one and I want to keep it, somebody wants to buy it. It's like,
good problem. Sounds like a solution in search of a problem to me.
Well, maybe I've got to find some felt and make some. But you know, I think as a homage to Borsalino, they make probably the best, to be honest, in that respect, lightweight.
I cannot, like I said, again, as somebody that only owns one example, but again, in that example, it left an impression. And also, like, there's so many great ones that I've seen posted that I'm like, wow, if only, right? So this probably won't be my last Borsalino, but it's my first Borsalino. And again, it doesn't mean I'll never sell it, right? Like, I never say never. But just like we're not stagnant, our collections are not stagnant. If somebody makes me a compelling offer, I mean, you know, that's like it's kind of like, again, I have so many hats, but I will say that this just, for me, luckily for me, this was my first example, and it probably is going to create a very never-ending halo for Borsalino in my mind, right? We talk about like that cognitive bias, the halo effect, where when somebody like somebody like a brand does you right, you now, like, even if they make a misstep, right? You forgive them, because you know what? They probably just had an error, right? Maybe they had a bad stretch, a bad run. We do that with cars. We do that with every brand that we trust. And we say, okay, somebody has a problem. Well, you probably got a bad one, but that's a drop in the bucket. That's kind of the exception, not the rule with the brand.
Yeah. Cool.
But with back to Jeff's mention, he said, if you get a Borsalino and it happens to be one of those Western weights, then don't fight it. Maybe convert it into a Western hat. Maybe you don't have a Western, but now you can make it your Western. It could be your Borsalino Western. Why not? Right?
Yeah, I think it comes back to this other thing, which is about learning how to steam and put a crown shape into your hat. So, you know, it's not as difficult as it sounds, but when it's quite daunting if you've only got one or two hats and you've got one that you particularly like and you don't want to muck it up, as it were. You've got to get the courage to have a go. So maybe invest in a second-hand older hat and practice on it, because of course, once you've made up one hat and one crown, you can just steam it and make another one up. But what you need is a form that you can actually open the crown. And what I mean by that is, to take out all the shape there, you need the dome shape of the wooden crown. Now, a lot of people don't have wooden blocks. They use the polystyrene, and they'll shape it themselves, or they'll use a pudding bowl or whatever. But you need something just to take the shape, the original shape, out before you start reshaping it.
And I'm just going to be, as a completionist, I'm going to mention one more thing that Jeff mentioned. Well, he didn't mention this in that post, but we were talking about like hats that you can wear out in the rain. Jeff recently posted his Akubra Style Master.
Yeah.
I still don't have an Akubra. Jeff is offering to solve that problem for me.
Well, that's a beautiful hat. I mean, I've had a few of those, and honestly, I mean, I've got a soft spot for a Kubra. It's probably one of my early hats that I bought. And again, the felt, they make the felts themselves over in Australia there, and it's clearly it's all made for the outback, and they have the need to keep warm but basically keep the sun off their heads. And it's when you feel the felt that they use, it's quite different from a lot of the felts that you'll have in America or we have in Europe. And so everybody that's collecting hats should have an Akubra in there. But they do so many different styles that I would say to anybody, go and have a look at their website. And actually, interestingly, they've only recently been taken over as well. So I'm not quite sure.
I didn't know that.
That's done. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it's done to the range of hats because I've not looked lately. But on the second-hand market, I've seen the prices go up, and it might therefore be that the older hats that were made by the previous owners may well be held in high esteem, and therefore, be solidifying their value, if you like.
Okay, well, great. You know what? Once my buddy Jeff there solves this Akubra issue, this hole in my collection, I told him whenever you got time, I've managed to, like, now knowing, like, right, obviously having so many things that I want to do, I am a little bit more patient these days in terms of, like, waiting for the hat to find its way to into my collection. So that's already something that I feel like that will be a future show. Maybe I'll even have Jeff come join me on here if he wants to. I mean, he hasn't, like, really jumped at the idea so far because he does sell these cases. I told him, come out here and talk about your case. I will talk about it after I go and use it, but you probably forgotten already more than I will ever know about this case because you sell them. And I'm sure with Akubra, now that we know that you have experience, Paul, with Akubra, maybe we'll have a dedicated Akubra show here in a future Hat Tuesday episode. Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah. I noticed you put up Ian's post earlier on. We didn't really comment on the
in terms of the hat snobbery.
I mean, it's I think you're right, Ian. There's a people that don't know about hats that see you in the streets. Either you get the odd snigger now and again, but otherwise you get the odd compliment. And I've been stopped on a few occasions, and that's quite pleasant and nice. But then there are people, like on the forums, that, and it sort of puts me off a number of the forums, to be honest, where you do get this sort of some individuals in all walks of life want to be able to exert their position because of what they believe is superior knowledge of something. And it's just not worth getting into the argument. It's just like, okay, whatever your view is, fine. Okay, you keep your view, I'll have mine, and leave it at that. But it does sort of knock the edge off of what we're trying to do as a community. So I think it is unfortunate if people do that. But again, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and those people that start to look at hats, you can, even the most basic of hat collectors can tell a nice quality hat when they see one. They know the different trims, and they know that felt looks particularly nice. Therefore, it's obviously not wool, so it must be something a little bit special. And people admire it, but it's when they start getting a little bit sort of further than that we have to sort of watch it, I suppose, and just try and manage it, really, or diffuse it. Let's put it that way.
And for me, like, my approach always on that is very much like, so usually you see that, and then what I try to do is I try to redirect the focus, right? So if somebody comes on and posts about a hat and maybe gets a negative reaction, instead of addressing the person that provided the reaction, I will just go and start a conversation directly with the person and say, hey, first of all, great hat, and you're welcome here. And, like, I want to see more. Like, do you have more hats? I want to see more of your hats, because, again, we got to know that we all started off somewhere. Everybody, like, when you make that decision to post and hit send or hit submit, you're taking a chance, right? You're putting yourself out there, And it's unfortunate that somebody puts himself out there to share, and somebody has to kind of like rain on their parade.
Yeah, I mean, we're all at different stages on our journey, and it just so happens to be hats in this case. But
Right.
you know, it would be nice that people reach out and help each other along that way. But it is what it is, as they say.
Yeah. And it's very similar, right? So there's the quality of the hat, supposedly the quality of the hat versus the quantity, right? Somebody does the same thing when saying, "Oh, you got 20 hats, I got 20,000," and I'm like, "Okay, that's great. I don't know what I would do with 20,000 hats." I'm like, it's like, it always reminds me of the Bruce Lee quote, and I mentioned it before. It's like, "I fear not the man who has practiced one kick 10,000, who's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Good point. Yeah.
If you got one hat and you really know everything, that hat inside and out, you wear it every day, I respect you probably in many ways more, because I personally can't do that, at least not yet. Maybe one day I will get to, I'd probably sooner get to one watch than I will to go one hat. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but if you are able to do that, especially if you're an older gentleman, for me, I always respect age. I automatically assume wisdom, because again, this person's alive. Like, they must have done something right?
Yeah.
So it's just, call me crazy, right? Like Brian mentioned, like, he's called old school. Instead of old school, he's called old school because being old is cool. I happen to agree wholeheartedly with that. Like, if you've lived on this earth for 100 years, or close, like almost like my Uncle Dom, if you've lived on this earth for 100 years, you automatically got to get more respect because you did that, and you still look good, right? Like, if you can do that and still look good like that, you're basically a superhero to me, but I'm a little loco, sometimes I'm a little crazy, and but for me, I think there's wisdom in that kind of thinking, as opposed to the opposite, which you kind of, that stereotype of the young kid that looks at an old person and mocks them, and then told them that they're out of touch, and essentially pretends that they don't even exist. I think that's kind of the biggest crime that we perpetrate against older people, is to assume they don't even exist. Like, they'll have family members talking about them like they're not even there. I think that's criminal. Sad. If not criminal, it's sad. But yeah, I really enjoyed this discussion. What I want to do now, Paul, because I already feel like we got an hour and a half here, I just want to talk about making sure I plug the hat giveaway, right? This is not like the end all and be all hat. We mentioned that it's got many. Well, I don't know. Depending on how you look at this is many. But I bought this hat. I might have been at a thrift shop, but I said, okay, this has to come home with me. I never really wear it, so it will be a hat that I give away once we reach 100 subscribers. It's kind of an alpine-looking hat. It's obviously a hat that's from like probably the 60s or 70s, if I had to guess. But you never know. Like, this might be their first hat. But all you have to do is be a subscriber at the time of the giveaway. Once I get 100, I will come up. Maybe I'll do a dedicated video on this hat. I'll try to wear it to see if it looks okay, but I might not wear it. But what I'll do is I'll randomly draw, or I'll figure out some way to make it fair amongst my subscribers. And if I don't know if you're a subscriber, I might ask you to prove it to me by sharing a screenshot. It won't be crazy. It will be something pretty sincere. But I might just ask for you to cover shipping, only because I do have an international audience. I don't know what shipping would be like to get you to, let's say, the UK or to Australia or to somewhere else. So I might ask you to cover shipping. But yeah, you have a chance to win this hat. All you got to do is be subscribed. So if you have a chance, subscribe now. Also support Paul. Paul is gold. I mean, I think I speak for everybody that's seen Paul on our channel. Like, we're blessed to have you on here, Paul. Anytime you come on, you're always welcome. I personally enjoy it, and I think I can speak for everybody else. We enjoy it as well.
Well, it's great to have a chat. It's fun. It's like we said before. It's got to be. It's a hobby. It's fun. It's it's great. And if somebody actually likes what I do, then that's a blessing. And if they want to buy a hat, fantastic. But otherwise, just got to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is next week, right now it's in the schedule. So give you a preview about Hat Tuesday number 3. My buddy Steve Heck, who was on here during one of our talks, Steve Heck, who posts on the Fedora Lounge, he is an expert on all things German and Austrian fine hats. So he shared some of his knowledge as a participant. Here, platinum. I didn't know where the platinum came from. Ian, you might need to explain that one. I might have missed something. But Steve Heck will join us next week if all goes as planned, and he will talk. I'll try to be here. Paul, you're also welcome to kind of interact with Steve as he goes forward and introduces. I feel like he's going to be here several times. At least I hope so. But maybe we only have him once. I don't know. I can never assume that folks will come back. But I know he's always welcome. I told him you can be here as much as you want and is speaking as often as you want. Oh, Paul is not gold, but thank you. Yes. I'm so short. Ian, thank you. My faithful moderator, you know when to interject and correct Luke. Paul is definitely platinum. He's probably something better than platinum. But we'll just call it platinum for now. So the other thing I wanted to mention here is, and if you guys are Facebook friends with me, I recommend that you, if you have a hat on, feel free to Facebook friend me. If you don't have a hat on, I apologize, but I may or may not accept your friend request depending on how well I know you. But that's just the way I do things right now. But if you are one of my Facebook friends, you probably saw a post that I posted today commemorating the loss of my brother 7 years ago. Nelson Nelson passed away way too young. He changed my life without even him knowing that he changed my life. If he does know, if he's watching, he did change my life. So you guys probably knew from a previous stream that I used to be 300 pounds. I lived a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. I ballooned up to 300 pounds. Nelson's passing at a very early age was probably the catalyst for me to try to lose that weight. So every year, because he died on 9/9, I donate $99 to the American Diabetes Association. Not because it's some ridiculous, it's kind of just in many ways, kind of a cute memoriam that I do. And I'm sure other family do the same, but, I never ask about it. But Nelson, we love you. We miss you. We'll never forget you. You've touched so many lives. You touched my life. And I know you did the same for everybody that knew you. So this is dedicated to my brother, Nelson, who passed away 7 years ago today. So shout out to my family and my friends and everybody that knew Nelson and all the folks that said something nice, even if you didn't know Nelson and you said something really nice on that. It's not lost on me. I appreciate it. I mentioned this before. The quote goes, and I'll repeat it here, in Tuesdays with Maury. Great book, also a great film. Now that Ian mentioned it's a great film as well. Tuesdays with Maury, I recommend that book wholeheartedly by Mitch Albom. It's just a famous book. And I'm not well read, but it's one of those books that I have read and I recommend. But there's a quote in there that says, "Death ends a life, not a relationship." So that's just a parting quote for you guys. I know we've all been there in one respect or another. We've lost a loved one or somebody that we really cared about, or several. And I leave you with that. So this has been Luke and Paul and Ian for Hat Tuesday number 2. So make sure you support Paul. I got his information scrolling here. There's no reason not to. He deserves it. He is platinum at least. I didn't say it. Ian said it. And like I said, if you don't believe me, you better believe Ian because he don't lie. So yeah, this has been Luke and Paul and Ian for Hat Chat Tuesday. Well, Hat Tuesday number 2. And regardless of whether or not you like or subscribe, you know, you do whatever you feel like. But if you could do me one favor, just one favor, stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day and ciao.